nerdy side. Before it closed more than 7 years ago, I worked at a comic book and video game store in my community, which I really enjoyed. Even though I have moved on, my parents still behave as though I work there. The best part of my position at the store was getting to know another geek with huge ambitions. We co-founded a successful IT support business together. My business partner ultimately made the decision to sell our company to a bigger corporation. I was bought out with cash and stock options as part of the deal, and it worked out rather well. I started a few side projects and made a number of wise investments, several of which were quite profitable. I try not to brag, but I have more than $1 million in assets. I currently work for a brand new private startup as its CTO. Even though I'm wealthy, I live a humble life. All of the furnishings in my comfortable 2-bedroom house in a fantastic area is used, and I drive a 15-year-old Saturn. Right now, I'm not in a relationship. I have a hectic life and see my therapist on a regular basis. Like my melancholy and asthma, I deal with drinking, which is difficult because my parents don't take it seriously. They believe it to be wholly mental. Even if it's not what other people anticipate or comprehend, I've been able to carve out a prosperous career for myself in spite of the ups and downs. My parents expect me to join them for supper every Sunday night. They live on the opposite side of the state, so the travel is not quick. It takes 90 to 120 minutes each way, which eats up over half of my weekend. They still seem to think that, as an unmarried individual and what my brother likes to refer to as a mental case, I have nothing better to do. These meals are frequently difficult. I get unsolicited advice on how to marry, establish a family, and be a proper adult for 3 hours. Or I sit through lengthy conversation about my brother's most recent huge sale at the car dealership, which is the buzz of the table. Although they have never called me a mooch directly, the implication is there if I skip one of these dinners. It is both frustrating and perplexing. I frequently question why I still go to these events when I talk to my therapist. My family has a tendency to downplay or misrepresent all of my accomplishments. People back home still think I work at the long-gone game store. My brother was seen as more mature and gregarious than I was, and he had a successful profession. As a result, I was continuously made fun of for my prior retail experience. I found it challenging to communicate to my family back home the truth about my life and my achievements because of this disparity. Games and comics were sometimes written off as immature entertainment. Despite my genuine expertise in technology, my attempts to discuss it were typically overshadowed. My brother would interrupt me and pretend as if I didn't know anything. Even though I knew he was babbling, I typically just listened to him. I was scared to correct him since I would have to explain my work and defend my knowledge. I secretly scared that they wouldn't value my career and that it would alter their opinion of me. I'll confess that I've had difficulties and occasionally been a complete mess. However, everything changed last month. My brother managed to get his hands on some of my personal information. The truth is that he employed a private investigator to carry out what he said was a background check on my employment. I had a sneaking suspicion that he was organizing an intervention with my folks. They were totally unprepared for what they discovered. They learned my actual value as a person, that I didn't live in a rundown flat, and other private information. Since I work in security, this was very ironic. After making the connections, I was even able to track out the source of the hack by receiving notifications about unauthorized efforts to get my credit report. Everything became clear after this revelation, and I now have to deal with my family's abrupt and unanticipated change in how they view me. It's a lot to take in, particularly in light of our relationship's history of miscommunication and undervaluation. I chose to have the same private detective firm look into my brother's money since I was so upset over the breach of my privacy. My brother was actually living well beyond his means. A file with Child Protective Services, several previous arrests for DWI and public intoxication, and domestic disturbance calls were also discovered throughout the investigation. He was having trouble making his scheduled back payments to the IRS and managing 3 mortgage loans on his house. Despite the fact that there were currently no ongoing charges, his credit was a total mess. In contrast, my parents had little more than what I already knew and lived modest lifestyles. When it came to money, they were realistic and pragmatic. I was so concentrated on getting ready to confront my family at the next meal, hoping it would cause a rift, that I didn't even care to see how my sister was doing. But the dinner's atmosphere was completely different from what I had imagined. My parents started to treat me with a strange sort of veneration, as if I were the golden child. This adjustment obviously distressed my brother. He lost his anger midway through dinner. In an attempt to restore his reputation, he began boasting about recent sales commissions and a purported promotion. I just gave him my congratulations and mentioned his debt, IRS problems, and stretched credit condition in a tactful manner. In other words, I called attention to my brother's financial disaster while simultaneously celebrating his accomplishments. The whole thing was oddly gloomy. The already challenging family dynamic was made even more awkward by my parents' sudden change in behavior toward me, which appeared forced and artificial. At first, my brother disputed everything when I handed him a copy of the report. But I pointed out that by utilizing the agency to look into me, he had inadvertently suggested it. As I have to say, that felt good for a little while. My parents, who reprimanded him and responded with dramatic shock, were obviously aware of it as well. The whole thing became very unsettling because the report needed my social security number. It was not a pleasant revelation or the ensuing argument. As it revealed my family's avarice and cowardice, my disdain for them grew. They started accusing one another of a variety of things throughout the course of the following hour. I made every effort to keep quiet, but sometimes they became irate with me. I would either shrug or respond with a nonchalant, one-word comment when that occurred. My sister's husband, my brother's wife, and their 5 kids looked on in shock as our family disintegrated like never before. Our meetings were typically routine and uninteresting. My sister would give updates whenever she could, my brother and his wife would boast about their lives, my mom would strike up a conversation, and my dad would complain in response. This collapse had never occurred during one of our family dinners. It was a tumultuous meal, to say the least. As long-simmering, deeply ingrained issues exploded into the open, the customary subtle jabs about how I should look up to my brother and be a real man were replaced by astonished quiet. I got into a heated disagreement with my dad, brother, and myself. They dug up every relic of family strife from the previous 30 years and argued over who was responsible for everything. It was like watching an unruly drama play out in real time. All of my negative thoughts about my family seemed to be validated during such instances. In all honesty, I felt terrible, even though you might have expected me to feel some sort of justice or triumph. I became aware of my poor handling of the situation. Although I was well aware of these flaws, what had I meant to accomplish by making my brother's wrongdoings public? His children now know about his tumultuous history, which I had not wanted them to. When my brother yelled at me in a fit of wrath, the situation reached a breaking point. His harsh statements, such as, "You should have never been born," were stunning, but what really stuck out was my parents' desperate attempts to calm him down, a degree of desperation I had never witnessed before. He accused me of being the cause of all the family's problems. They made an effort to intervene, but they never really admitted or accepted responsibility for the way they had treated me throughout the years. I was both very saddened and vindicated. It served as a harsh and obvious reminder of the underlying problems in our family's dynamics. My parents accused me of something else until I could take it no more. They implied that I could have helped but decided not to, claiming that I was refusing to help a sick niece or nephew. I had no knowledge of such a circumstance. No one had ever told me about this issue or reached out to me for help. I suspected they were making things up as they went along, but I didn't challenge it. "I thought you believed I was still working at the comic book shop," I reminded them instead. They never seemed to understand that the store had closed in 2011, even though I had reminded them several times. The way they had misrepresented our family history to fit their storyline appalled me. I drove home after feeling overburdened and annoyed. I'm feeling conflicted right now. Knowing that they would probably put pressure on me to repay them now that they are aware of my money makes me feel deceived. I know what's coming because I've witnessed how they treated my brother in a similar manner. However, I also recognize and value the fact that my parents provided for my basic needs as a child, including clothing, food, and housing. It will be difficult to navigate this labyrinth of thankfulness, bitterness, and freshly set boundaries. I'll probably need my therapist's assistance to process this change in dynamics. It's obvious that establishing clear limits going forward will be essential. Growing up was challenging because, to be honest, I was never the favorite child in my family. My brother mistreated me, but my parents did little to stop it, even though they never physically beat me. My parents responded as though nothing was wrong whether he kicked, hit, or said extremely terrible things. They completely disregarded it. It is really concerning that they do not consider verbal abuse to be damaging or real. Verbal abuse is terrible in and of itself, but it is even more painful when the people who are there to protect you choose to ignore it. I've had enough of fighting this for years. Even though I am aware that they are my family, I feel the need to keep a permanent distance. Although I wish them well, I think it will be better for me to go on and begin a new chapter without them. If I discover someone amazing, like a girlfriend, and we decide to be married and have kids, what will happen? Then, how will I deal with these problems with my family? It may get rather complicated, so I'm attempting to figure it out. How can I introduce my new family to my family if I'm not talking to them anymore? I have a lot of questions about what lies ahead. Prior to reading the update, allow me to give you some advice. Your family didn't appreciate you as a person